During the first 2 years of the Biden administration, Maxine Waters served as chair of financial services. And I think they had over 60 hearings on housing, and they passed 0 bills on it. And you look at housing as an issue. I believe it's one of the most fundamental issues we need to deal with as a country. You look at immigration and the border. You look at energy policy. You look at, obviously, taxes, spending, regulations. But housing is critical. We're 6.5 million units underbuilt nationwide. My state of New York has a real housing crisis. You have 50,000 vacant units in New York City right now, in part because of the policies that have been put in place in New York. Rent control and the rent laws that were put in place in New York have created a nightmare. Because if you're a landlord or a property owner and you're told arbitrarily that we're going to cap rents here, but taxes go up, utility costs go up, and then you're told you have to bring the apartment up to standard, well, you know what you're going to do? You're not going to do it. You're going to leave it vacant and you're going to take the tax write-off. And that's what's happening in New York. Over 50,000 vacant units. So when President Biden comes out last week to try and appease the progressive left and says, we're going to cap rent nationwide, that's the biggest load of bullshit I've ever heard. It doesn't work. You have to incentivize, okay? You have to incentivize construction, new construction. You have to incentivize landlords and property owners. Subsidies alone are not going to solve this problem. And so to me, I look at this, Republicans really have not had a housing plan since Jack Kemp. And Democrats' housing plan is to just throw more money at it. That either way doesn't work. So I'm actually in process of coming up with a very robust housing plan that I'm going to be introducing in the coming weeks that really looks to tackle this issue. The National Association of Realtors put out a report showing that the average mortgage cost in Rockland and Westchester counties, where I represent, just north of New York City, home to the Clintons and George Soros, the average mortgage cost is up $1,000 a month. So over $12,000 a year more in mortgage costs because of interest rates, because of insurance costs, because of taxes. This is unsustainable. So you have a crisis in terms of supply. You have a crisis in terms of cost. You have a challenge across the board where young people, I'm 37 as well, young people cannot afford, by the way, I have a better beard than J.D. Vance, but you cannot afford to buy a home. Okay, so the rental market is getting squeezed as well, and the cost within the rental market is going up. So you have to incentivize from the federal government to build the supply. Okay, you can't just arbitrarily cap rents. That does not work, and we see the consequence of that in New York.
I mean, just quickly, any kind of bullet points on what might be in your bill? Can we get some news out of you today? What you're going to propose?
We are in process of drafting final language, so I'm not going to get too far ahead of it. But I will tell you, it is multifaceted and covers a broad swath, including dealing with homelessness, dealing with affordable housing, dealing with insurance, interest, mortgage interest rates. How we combat all of this, and ultimately how we incentivize development. Because if you're not building new housing stock, okay, we're not fixing the problem. And the other part of this is, look, I live in the suburbs. My district is almost entirely suburban. There's only one city, the city of Peekskill, which the way it is structured and developed is more like a village. It's more like a small downtown business district. Than it is a major urban center. So multifamily housing, while an element to this, is not necessarily going to work in certain areas. And my district, I have the New York City watershed. A lot of areas of my district are on septic and well. You need to invest in infrastructure. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Act actually was one of Joe Biden's great accomplishments, and I would have supported it had I been a member at the time. because you need to build roads, bridges, culverts, sewer, water infrastructure to incentivize the development of housing.
And one last question for you before I turn to the mayors for the local view. What is your expectation for housing policy in a second Trump term? Any thoughts, expectations, insights onto what a second Trump term would do to address affordability and accessibility?
Look, I think the biggest issue facing the country is affordability. Okay, the average cost of groceries, gas, home heating, housing has gone up astronomically under Joe Biden. People cannot afford to live in areas like mine, the state of New York. New York leads the nation in outmigration in large part because of the disastrous policies that have been put in place economically, chasing jobs and businesses out. So I think President Trump's approach is going to be focused on a number of factors. Number one, obviously, reducing government spending, bringing down inflation, tax reform, which also will help in terms of incentivizing new construction. In addition to that, obviously, you need energy reform. We need to increase domestic production of energy. If you want to bring down the cost of construction, you need a strong energy policy. When you ban natural gas, when you ban new natural gas hookups and require everything to be electric, guess what that does? That jacks up the cost of construction and the cost of home ownership. That limits the ability of people to get into the housing market. So we have to be smart about what we're doing. And like I said, I'm putting forth a robust housing plan that I will take to the administration and say, this has to be a priority. 6.5 million units underbuilt. We need housing in this country, and housing is economic development. It's good paying jobs for our construction industry, and obviously it gets people into safety, it gets them out of poverty and homelessness, and it's critically important to the overall economy.